Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we'll see what Weapons is. One of the most disturbing and hard to forget movies is Weapons, directed by Zach Cregger, a story that delves deep into the twisted and inexplicable, leaving an uncomfortable mark even after the final credits roll. From the very first minute, the plot throws us straight into a fact as unsettling as it is impossible to ignore. 17 children, all from the same class, mysteriously disappear from their homes at exactly 2:17 a.m. None leave a trace. None warn anyone. None say goodbye. It's as if an invisible, irresistible, and silent force had ripped them out of reality, guiding them with surgical precision toward a destination that no one knows and from which they never return. There is only one exception: Alex, the only one who, as if nothing had happened, shows up at school the next day, sitting quietly at his desk, oblivious to the chaos unfolding around him. For the police, and especially for the parents, this case becomes a puzzle that doesn't fit any logical explanation, a mystery that seems to mock the laws of reason, as if they were facing something that doesn't belong to this world. What exactly happened that night? The story unfolds through 6 different perspectives, and each one not only reveals new pieces of the puzzle, but also opens doors to increasingly darker corridors. What is discovered in the end is not for the faint of heart. 1 month after that cursed dawn, we enter the first perspective, Justin's, the class teacher. Time has not erased the tension. On the contrary, it has thickened it. At a school meeting, the parents of the missing children watch her with looks full of anger and suspicion, as if she were responsible for something she doesn't even understand. Tired of being the target of those silent, yet accusatory stares, she decides to escape the pressure for a few hours and buys liquor to drown her anguish. Back at home, a sharp knock on the door interrupts the silence. She opens it, but there is no one there. Minutes later, it happens again, and again the door opens to nothing. However, this time something has changed. On her car windshield, someone has written the word "witch" with shaky letters, as if made out of rage or desperation. The next day, Principal Marcus calls her in and advises her to stay away from the school for a while. But Justin, restless and with intuition pounding in her temples, insists on talking to Alex, the only child who didn't disappear. Marcus forbids her outright, with a tone that sounds more like a warning than advice. That night, looking to distract herself, Justin agrees to go out with Paul, a police officer who is also her ex-boyfriend. Although he is engaged, the history they share weighs heavier than any moral warning, and they end up spending the night together. The next morning, driven by something mixing curiosity and fear, Justin goes to Alex's house. She spies through a window, sees the boy's parents, and what she witnesses is enough to make her nervous. She calls Marcus to tell him what she saw, but only gets evasive answers. Later, back at the liquor store, she is attacked by a woman who grabs her hair fiercely, Paul's fiancée, who has discovered the betrayal. The following day, Justin parks her car in front of Alex's house and stays watching, observing every movement, until sleep overtakes her. In the middle of the night, a figure slowly emerges from the house, approaches her vehicle, opens the door, and without saying a word, cuts a lock of her hair before leaving. The second perspective introduces us to Archer, the father of one of the missing children. Obsessed with finding answers, he reviews his security camera recordings again and again, visits other parents, and analyzes their footage too. When tracing the routes some of the children took that night, he discovers something disturbing. They all converge at the same point. Archer is convinced that Justin knows more than she says, and that he is the one who wrote "wits" on her car. One day, while driving through the area where all the routes lead, he sees Justin at a gas station. He approaches to confront her, but out of nowhere, Principal Marcus appears running toward her with an uncontrollable look of fury. Archer intervenes to stop him, The third perspective takes us into Paul's life, the police officer and Justin's ex-boyfriend. During his routine work, he arrests a young man trying to rob a store. During the struggle, Paul is pricked by a needle the boy was carrying, filled with drum gas. Overcome with anger, he hits him, but then tries to negotiate. If the young man doesn't report the assault, he won't report the theft. The boy agrees. That same night, Paul goes out with Justin, as we already saw from her perspective, and spends the night with her. The next morning, his fiancée, upon discovering this, decides to confront Justin directly. Later at work, Paul runs into the young man again, whose name is James, and begins to follow him. The fourth perspective plunges us into James's life. He lives in the woods, trapped in an addiction that consumes him, surviving thanks to small thefts that pay for his dose. The night he tried to enter that store was the same night Paul caught him. Days later, wandering through the city, he passes by Alex's house. The windows are covered with newspaper, which makes him think it's abandoned. Without thinking twice, he decides to enter. What he finds leaves him petrified. Alex's parents are sitting in the living room, motionless, staring at him with blank expressions, without saying a word. Despite the unreal atmosphere, James keeps searching the house for something valuable. But when he goes down to the basement, the air becomes colder, heavier, and then he sees them. There are the 17 missing children, motionless, forming a semicircle. The moment he steps on the last stair, they all turn their heads simultaneously to look at him. Their eyes seem empty, but fixed on him, as if they recognized him. Panic invades him, and he flees the house without looking back. James, determined not to bear the weight of what he knows alone, feels the pressure in his chest growing with every passing second. Finally, he picks up the phone and dials the reward number he had seen in an old ad, hoping to find an escape or at least some guidance on the other end. The voice that answers is firm, cold, and leaves no room for negotiation. Take the information to the police. With his heart pounding, James obeys. Without thinking twice, he heads to the police station. Paul, the police officer we already know, is there at that very moment. Paul's gaze meets James's, and in an instant, something inside him ignites like a spark setting off gunpowder. Without a word, Paul starts chasing him. What follows is a frantic race. James runs with all his strength, pushing anyone in his way, dodging passersby, lungs burning as if he's swallowing fire. But Paul doesn't relent, until, cornered and with no way out, James drops the bomb. He knows where the missing children are. The tension snaps like a thread. Without wasting a second, they head straight to Alex's house. Paul enters first. Time moves slowly, painfully slowly, so much so that the sun finally sets and night takes over. James waits outside, restless, until he finally sees Paul come out. But it's not to say goodbye or leave. With a mechanical gesture, and without uttering a word, Paul opens the patrol car door, grabs James by the arm, and drags him inside the house. Silence becomes heavier than any scream. Here we change perspective to enter the fifth viewpoint, Principal Marcus's. After receiving a worried call from Justin, the teacher, he decides he can't stand idly by. He looks for answers on his own and contacts Alex's parents to arrange a meeting. However, instead of them, who appears as Gladys, the boy's great-aunt. There is something about her that immediately sends a chill down the spine, a strange aura, as if she carries the shadow of another era and another morality. In a soft voice, but heavy with invisible weight, she says the parents are ill, too weak to attend. Later, Gladys shows up at Marcus's house with an innocent excuse to ask for a glass of water. But as soon as she crosses the threshold, the atmosphere changes. Her eyes scan the room with an intention unrelated to thirst. She pulls a small twig from her pocket and wraps a personal object she had taken from the principal's office in it. Then, with precise movement, she cuts herself and shakes a tiny bell whose sound seems to pierce the air. Marcus, not understanding what is happening, begins to lose his will. His gaze empties. Gladys then wraps a lock of hair from Marcus's partner in that same twig and breaks it. The effect is immediate and terrifying. Marcus, now a mere instrument under her control, brutally murders his partner. The rule is simple and macabre. If you wrap a person's personal object in that twig, that person falls under Gladys's control. If you then add another person's object, the first one is doomed to kill the second. Satisfied with her first act, Gladys takes the lock of hair she cut from Justin and places it in the twig. Marcus, now a hunter without will, runs after her like a rabid animal. He finds her while she's pumping gas, but before he can reach her, Justin, in a survival impulse, starts the car and flees. She doesn't get far before feeling a sharp impact. She has run over Marcus, killing him instantly. The escape saves her life. That night, Justin and Archer give statements. Something changes between them. Archer starts looking at her differently. He finally confesses his obsession, the theory that has kept him awake for weeks. All the children ran to the same place. Justin confirms it, and that place is none other than Alex's house. And so we reach the sixth and final perspective. Alex, the only child who didn't disappear that night. At school, his life is a constant torment of teasing and shoving. But at home, his parents are his refuge, until Gladys appears. Her arrival, with her sickly appearance and a small potted tree, marks the beginning of something Alex could never have imagined. The next day, after returning from school, Alex finds his parents in a disturbing trance-like state. Gladys, on the other hand, seems rejuvenated, as if she absorbed energy from some invisible source. She sends him straight to his room. The following night, the same ritual. Twig, cut, bell, and this time his parents, controlled, stab themselves repeatedly in the face with a fork, without complaining, without blinking. She stops them and threatens Alex. He must keep silent and keep going to school as if nothing happened. Since then, the boy's life becomes a silent torture. He barely sleeps, eats little, and spends his days feeding his parents, who are no longer quite human. One night, seeing Gladys withered, Alex proposes a deal. He will help her if she leaves. She agrees with a poisonous smile. Alex's plan is as dark as it is desperate. He steals a belonging from each of his classmates and gives them to Gladys. At 2:17 a.m., she performs the ritual. The 17 missing children appear in the basement of the house. The promise to leave was a lie. Now Alex must feed them too. At that moment, Archer and Justin arrive to enter the house. As soon as they do, Paul and James attack them. Justin manages to take them down using Paul's gun, while Archer goes down to the basement looking for his son, but Gladys intercepts him. With the ritual, she turns him into her new killer and orders him to kill Justin. Alex, chased by his parents, locks himself in the bathroom. He finds one of the twigs with objects from the 17 children and wraps in it a strand of Gladys's wig hair. He cuts himself, performs the ritual, and breaks the twig. The result is immediate. The 17 children turn against Gladys and tear her apart. The story closes with Archer rescuing his son and Alex embracing his parents. But the calm is only an illusion. Neither they nor the children ever returned to being the same. And now that we know the entire sequence of events, it's impossible not to ask ourselves, who or what is really Gladys? How is she able to manipulate people, rejuvenate, and control others' wills at will? Everything points to her powers being based on a lethal combination of psychological manipulation, sympathetic magic rituals, and some kind of vital energy transfer. The twig and the lock of hair are not simple objects. In many magical traditions, Hair is one of the most powerful sources of connection to a person. It contains DNA, a physical and energetic imprint that allows creating a direct bond with its owner. When Gladys wraps that hair around the twig, cuts herself, and rings the bell, she not only activates a spell, but establishes absolute control over the victim. And if she then introduces an object belonging to another person, the bond is distorted, forcing the first victim to kill the second without any resistance. But that's not her only power. There is something even more disturbing: her rejuvenation. Each time someone falls into a trance under her control, she seems to regain strength, color, and life. This reminds us of ancient legends about witches and creatures like the Greek lamias or the Strzyga from Eastern Europe, beings that fed on the vital energy of the young to prolong their existence. It is no coincidence that Gladys seeks children. Their energy is purer, more intense, more useful for a process of vital absorption. And then there is the exact time, 2:17 a.m. It doesn't seem like a random number. In esoteric tradition, certain minutes and hours are considered weak points in the structure of time, moments when the barriers between the physical and spiritual worlds become thinner. For Gladys, this could be her moment of maximum power, the perfect window to attract and manipulate all those children remotely without needing to be physically present. The potted tree she carries might also be key. In many cultures, trees are considered portals or spiritual anchors. Hers could function as a power core, connected to the earth and to something much older. The twig she uses to control wills would then be an extension of that core, a symbolic tentacle that allows her to influence others as if they were puppets. And the most disturbing thing of all, after the victims are freed or their captor dies, they never return to being the same. This suggests that the process is not completely reversible, that their mind, soul, or essence have been marked forever. In European folklore, there are legends about changelings, children stolen by fairies and returned as empty copies. What we see here could be something similar, only much darker. If we put all the pieces together, Gladys might not simply be a woman practicing black magic. Her nature points more to an incarnated spiritual parasite, an entity that needs human bodies to channel energy and survive, using hair and blood as ritual keys, and the tree as a base to sustain her power, a being that not only steals wills, but literally feeds on life itself, leaving behind empty shells that were once human. And the most unsettling thought is that if her abilities really rely on principles that exist in folklore and occult traditions, theoretically, someone could try to replicate them. So next time you wake up at 2:17 in the morning and feel someone cutting a lock of your hair, it might already be too late.